Before you go and start your YouTube channel, you need to kind of figure out why you're doing it. What's your why? Is it money? Okay, well, why do you need money? Do you have a family? To find out someone's true why, you have to keep asking why.
Where's your inspiration coming from? Like, how are you going to keep having ideas for topics?
20 years from now, what do the YouTube thumbnails look like? How do you stay consistent? How do you keep this thing going without burning out or just getting stuck and saying, hey, I got writer's block, I can't keep this going? Growing a successful YouTube channel is not rocket science. There's so many great resources out there that you can rely on that give you all the best practices and all that kind of stuff. And if you were to start a YouTube channel now in today's day, in this competitive YouTube era, what are the best practices? What are the things that you should be doing that maybe you're not? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode, is how to start a successful YouTube channel in 2024. So let's go ahead and just dive right into it. Welcome back to the Video Creator Show, you guys. My name is Augie Johnston. I'm here with my co-host, Grant Ball. And like I just said, we're talking about starting a YouTube channel. We're going to dive into thumbnails today too and talk about some thumbnail stuff, and as well as just other YouTube advice. So go ahead, pour yourself a cup of coffee, grab yourself a water, and let's go ahead and dive in. So Grant, first of all, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We were just talking. I've been cleaning my apartment, and honestly, that's probably the first step to starting a YouTube channel is just cleaning your apartment, cleaning your house, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm doing all right.
That makes sense too. Having a good work area, a clean workspace, right, is like number one step to being productive online, right? Productivity is part of being a YouTuber. You know, you're not going to have a boss telling you, hey, by 4 p.m. today, I need this video done or anything like that. YouTubers got to be their own bosses. So having a clean area to work from, you know, maybe having a nice little studio setup. So all you got to do is like press one button and you can start recording. Like those things are important in starting a YouTube channel. So yeah, it's kind of a good way to start it off, Grant. Good job.
Yeah, well, yeah. And also, I feel like when people are thinking about starting a YouTube channel, they're chasing a dream and they expect YouTube to fill some kind of void inside of them. But if you start with your personal life, like, just, is your space clean? Is it organized? Is it a pleasant place to be? Then you're gonna already fill some of that void just by existing in a nicer space, and that's gonna be a way better foundation to make videos from than if you're just kind of living in filth, or even if it's just kind of cluttered and it's not horrible, it's not as pleasant as it could be where you're living. And so I like this is very like grounded old man advice, but just keep your space clean before anything, and like take a shower and go outside and just kind of get your head screwed on as best you can, and don't expect YouTube to fill a void, because even if you get famous and nothing else changes, you're not going to feel any better. That's a fact. Like, it might be exciting for a while, but ultimately it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think as you were talking there, kind of popped an idea into my head. Like, before you go and start your YouTube channel, you need to kind of figure out why you're doing it. What's your why? Anything in life, right? If you figure out what your why is, then that will help a lot with the motivation and kind of the procrastination and that kind of stuff. So why are you doing it? Is it money? Okay, well, why do you need money? Do you have a family? Oh, that's why you need to start a YouTube channel, because you want to have a side income so that you can help, you know, maybe sign up your kids for soccer training, or you want to, I don't know, just live a better life, and that's your why, right? And I heard someone say it the other day, like, to find out someone's true why, you have to keep asking why, because the first time you say, why do you want to start a YouTube channel? They're going to say, you know, oh, to make some extra money. Why? Oh, so I can get my kids in some soccer training. Why? Oh, so they can make some new friends. Why? Oh, so that they get surrounded by a good group of friends as they grow up and they turn out to be a good person. And, you know, that I think that's a cool kind of, I don't know, practice to do in anything you do in life. Just keep asking why, and you get down to that root cause.
Exactly. And another thing, when you ask why, I feel like that can also help you figure out how you're going to create your YouTube channel, because there's different directions you can take, right? So as far as why, if your why is because you want to make money, then you probably want to run your YouTube channel like a business and not so much like in a canvas, right? So this is a business decision. Like I have a client, he bought a YouTube channel, and it's kind of like a spirituality kind of advice channel, 10 signs the universe is telling you you're on the verge of a breakthrough. Those types of videos, but he just bought the channel. I kind of get the feeling for him it was more of a business strategy, and he's still creating good content, but like he's not in front of the camera, he's not doing voiceover, he's not really doing any of the writing or the editing, he's just kind of managing it. And so if you're more interested in money, then do something like that. Like you should be more in a managerial role versus the one in front of the camera, in my opinion. Whereas if you're more interested in self-expression, then you should probably be the one who is in front of the mic, in front of the camera, however you're comfortable. Maybe you don't want to show your face, maybe you do want to show your face. But yeah, if you just have something to say and you need somewhere to say it and you feel like there's an audience for it and it would be nice if people were listening, then yeah, you should be kind of the main focus of your channel. But when you're just looking for money, like be a manager, start a business. Like don't shoehorn yourself into this role of being a personality when really this is just a business decision for you. And that's totally fine. But I think it's important to be honest about that.
Yeah, and some other reasons too that people start YouTube channels are just to have fun, so it's a creative outlet for a lot of people too. So that could be your why. And that's another good reason too. And I think another good reason, and that you see often too, is to help people. Right. That's a great why. Like you want to make an impact. You want to help, the younger version of yourself. You wish that there was a YouTube channel out there when you were younger that provided that kind of information. And that's exactly where I was when I started my basketball training YouTube channel. This was back in 2010, 2011. There wasn't too much out there at that time for somebody to go onto YouTube and find new basketball drills, which is what I was looking for. I wanted to, get better at basketball myself, and that stuff just wasn't there. And I did think, man, I wish this was here when I was growing up. And, nowadays these kids can go on YouTube and find whatever they want. But helping people is another big why. So, okay, kind of the next step and kind of the main step is getting over fear. If you want to start a YouTube channel, there's going to be some imposter syndrome or some fear or some hesitancy. What do you have to say to that? Did you have fear when you started your channel, and just kind of walk me through all that?
I had fear, but it wasn't the fear you're thinking of probably. So I started my channel in college. And it started taking off when I was a senior in college. I already had like a job offer. My life was kind of on track to be traditionally successful, kind of as a software engineer. But I was terrified of working a 9 to 5. Like I'd worked summer jobs and kind of gotten my feet wet with that 9 to 5 lifestyle, and I hated it. And even though I was making good money and I was grateful for it, I knew that like I can't do this for the next 50 years of my life. I mean, so I was terrified of living that life. So YouTube for me was like a pipe dream, essentially, that somehow worked out. So I was afraid of that lifestyle, and that caused me to run in the opposite direction with YouTube, like putting all of this energy into it until it finally worked out. So yeah, it wasn't imposter syndrome necessarily, but I was just kind of terrified of of a life I didn't want to live. And then YouTube made me go in that weird direction that ended up working. So, and as far as imposter syndrome, I would say in the beginning, I didn't have imposter syndrome. Like, I guess, so for some clarity, my channel is a video game channel, but we started out doing Let's Plays. So for those who don't know, a Let's Play is you play video games and you do commentary over it. And that's the video. When I was making those videos, I would kind of, show up, and I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really know how to have camera presence or be super entertaining. We would always record together with the other guys I started the channel with. So I think in those, like that era, I had imposter syndrome, especially because nobody was watching. We had like 37 subscribers after 3 months, and most of them were like our own accounts or friends or something. But then when Like, I wrote the first script for the show that ended up making our channel take off, and the show started doing well. I feel like I didn't deal with imposter syndrome until several years in, because I don't know, I was like 22 and I was just like having a good time making these videos. They were somehow doing well. I was just like, this is great. This is awesome. Like, this is destiny. But yeah, then kind of the years roll on, reality sets in. Like, I'm trying to pay my bills by essentially gambling with every new video, and that's kind of when the imposter syndrome started to set in. Like, feeling the pressure to cover things I didn't want to cover, and then kind of I didn't feel like I was making the videos I wanted to make. I was like pretending to be this guy who really loved this one kind of video game genre, but really I was more of like, I don't know, I kind of just like playing the games I want to play. Like, I wasn't necessarily the indie horror guy, but I was pretending to be the indie horror guy. Indie horror is a genre of video games who don't know. I guess for me, the imposter syndrome took a while to manifest, and it was only in a very specific scenario. And yeah, nowadays I still deal with it, and I'm still kind of working through it on a personal level. But yeah, I do just find that trying to get rid of my content brain is probably the biggest thing, of just being able to play video games without thinking about what video I'm going to make helps a lot. And just living my best personal life, living my life, not worrying about YouTube, just taking some time to heal. And that's kind of my wholesome advice for it. And as far as imposter syndrome, I think everybody deals with it in one form or another at some point in their lives. It might be in the very beginning, it might be kind of down the road, but when you are dealing with it, just know you're not alone and just keep making videos. But in my case, I kept making videos until I couldn't. Then, but eventually, and I still do occasionally make them. But yeah, you just gotta keep doing it. Like, everybody deals with it. Take action and try not to pay too much attention to your negative inner voices.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's an inner voice, right? The imposter syndrome. And I think the reason that most people have it, and maybe the reason you didn't experience it too, is because it mostly comes from people creating content where they're giving advice. If you're telling somebody how to do this and how to do that and kind of position yourself as an expert, then you experience imposter syndrome because you're like, well, I'm not as good as this guy, or I haven't done this, but it's YouTube. It's about you. So kind of my tip for people who are going through imposter syndrome and stuff is take on the kind of the persona of the reporter more than the expert, at least when you start, right? If you report on, things that work and you report on things you're learning, right? Then you can kind of get away with it. You don't have to say like, this is the best way to do this. You can say, I tried this, and from what I found, this is the best way to do this. And yeah, it's the reporter, man. I think that's a great kind of way to create content anyways, because doesn't all have to come from your brain, right? It can just come from research and just learning. So
that's some really good advice. Because yeah, especially I found making the kind of reporty type videos as opposed to like I'm the expert type videos where you're just those were easy to make and they tended to do well. And then the nice thing about reporting too is you tend to be piggybacking off trends anyway, which is good for your channel. Like, if you're constantly talking about things that are popular, then it's going to be easier to get views, and you do kind of remove yourself from the equation, right? Like, maybe you could give your opinion, but you always preface it with "this is my opinion," and then you're not really an imposter, are you? You're just kind of like, this is what I saw, this is what I think, but like, decide for yourself.
Okay, so we found our why. We got over the imposter syndrome and the fears. Let's talk some more technical things. Okay, so what do we do to get this channel up and running? I mean, first thing I'll say is you need channel art. What else do we need?
So yeah, channel art. So you're going to need a channel banner. You want to make sure your channel banner kind of fits within all the different dimensions of all the different devices. You can just Google like YouTube channel banner template. So just make sure you're like doing that so it doesn't get cropped weirdly. And then yeah, profile picture. Make a good profile picture. It could be your face. It could be something really simple. Honestly, that stuff isn't like crazy important, but you should have it. Like it shouldn't be ugly. Like as long as it's not ugly, like it's good enough to start. That's my take. And then yeah, the technical stuff, like do a little SEO research. Use the quadruple keyword rule. So every time you upload a video, make sure like the keywords in your title match the keywords in your description, match the keywords in your tags and your hashtags. So quadruple keyword rule. Just like get your SEO down. Use simple little things like that. And I mean, yeah. Also, do you have the right equipment? Like, buy a good mic, please. Like, don't use a headset mic. Get something like this. You can get a Blue Yeti for $100 and it'll sound pretty good. Like, just have the right equipment. Do you have editing software? You can use DaVinci Resolve. That's free if you don't want to pay for Premiere, which honestly you shouldn't. I do, but I've been using it forever. So yeah, the right equipment, profile art. Make sure your SEO is at least like decent, so that the videos you do make have like the maximum chance of succeeding, or at least a decent chance of succeeding. It's not worth putting all your time into a video and then you're not tagging things properly. You're just kind of like you're just wasting your time. Like you gotta give your video some legs. And then other technical things. I mean, it's thumbnails. Like, what's your thumbnail style? Like, how do you want to use your face? Like, are you showing your face in the video? I would actually say, if you're starting out new, don't use your face in the thumbnails because nobody knows who you are. Your face isn't going to bring attention. And then once you start gaining views, then you can start putting your face in there. Start easing yourself into your celebrity status. But don't start yourself out as a celebrity. Just create the best images you can for your thumbnails. Big text, some kind of descriptive image of whatever you're talking about. But yeah, big text, descriptive image, like that'll be good enough to get you started.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff you just kind of spoke about is like branding, right? Like your channel art, maybe your thumbnails, what your thumbnails look like, all the video assets in your videos, like they should all kind of tie together, right? You shouldn't have like channel art where you're like, I don't know, holding a dog or something and it's green, and then your channel's about something different, and then your thumbnails look different than your videos. Like, I like personally YouTube channels that like the branding kind of all fits together. I think that's cool. So you need to do some ideation on your thumbnails. You need to kind of figure out what kind of video assets you want in your videos when you edit them. And yeah, so the branding is definitely a step before you start creating the content. I wouldn't let that sit as an afterthought, although maybe not the most important thing, right, to succeeding on YouTube. It's really when it comes down to how good these videos are going to be when you make them.
Well, so as far as branding, like when you were making Baller Bootcamp, what was going through your mind with the branding there? So that wasn't an afterthought, that was like something you had in your brain before you ever started making videos?
Yeah, so the basketball training channel that I had was called Baller Bootcamp, and I'd already had a website. I already had done some things under that name. So we had like a little character even, which was like an army guy holding a basketball. That was like an illustration. So yeah, all my stuff kind of tied together with kind of camouflage look, kind of that army green colors, that little character, really just everything I pulled from the website. But to be honest, I wasn't as knowledgeable back then of really computers in general. Like I didn't even really know much about branding or anything back then. So it was more of an afterthought for me. But nowadays, right, when I'm working with clients or whatever, like we want to make sure that everything's tied together under their brand. Most people have a business behind their YouTube channel. So to me, that's important. So yeah, so now we got the branding, we got the channel art. We kind of know how we want our edits to look. We kind of know how we want our thumbnails to look. We can go ahead and start kind of the next step in starting this YouTube channel, and that's recording our first video. So before we go and record the first video, I think everyone needs to sit down and, I wouldn't say go as deep as like writing a mission statement and your core values and kind of all that business stuff. You don't need to do that, but you kind of need to know like kind of like what you stand for and like what makes you different. Like what's your value prop? Like what is your channel special? Why is your channel special? Why should somebody watch you over somebody else? Do you have any advice on kind of figuring all that stuff out?
I mean, for me, like the main driving factor in the style of video that ended up making my channel do well was I would just get inspiration. I guess, like, and if I kept thinking about an idea, then I knew it was a good idea because it kept popping into my head. And that might just be how my brain works. When I start, we'll say, obsessing about something, then I know there's something about this. Like, my intuition is telling me this is good. Like, this is a good bit. This is, even if it's like only one idea and that's not nearly enough to like flesh out a whole 15-minute video or whatever, I would start building the video kind of around that idea. It's like, okay, so the first video, for instance, that did well on the channel was called Samus Aran, the Story You Never Knew. So Samus is a video game character from the series Metroid, and you know, I'd played a lot of Metroid, and I was like, I find it fascinating that Samus can like talk to anybody. Like Samus goes to an alien planet and can communicate with like these bird people, and then Samus goes over here and is like kind of having interactions with like Metroids, which are like these little jellyfish beings that are kind of parasitic. And kind of no matter where Samus went, because of her technology, she was able to communicate with literally any life form ever and understand what it was, and you could scan it and read about it. So I was like, oh, she's the bridge between all forms of consciousness in the universe. Like, that's the thesis right there. And that's just kind of an interesting take on things. And then the video kind of just formed around that. So it's like, I don't want to start the video with my thesis like that. I mean, I guess it's the burning question is more like, why is Samus popular? And then that's the answer to it. Like, what makes Samus interesting? So yeah, I guess start with your idea that just feels right to you, and then kind of create things around it. You know, create your burning question that leads to that answer. And my first scripts I wrote, literally, I wrote them like I wrote a high school essay, like introduction with the burning question and like the thesis, basically, you know, why is Samus so popular, why do people like her, and then body with 3 points of data, right, of like example 1 to prove my point, example 2, example 3, and then conclusion. And so I just kind of used what I was taught in school and added a lot of really silly, weird things around it. You know, like you probably already know enough to create something like that. Just find your inspiration and start building things around it. And that's always how I end up creating things. And it worked out for me.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the burning question idea. I think every video you create, right, we want to create watch time, we want to keep retention. So having that question that gets answered in the video is, I think, a great way to do that. That's a great tip. One piece of advice that I would give is like kind of like, what's your value prop? Like you want to kind of have like a one sentence thing, like I help dog trainers learn how to, tame dogs or whatever. Like one simple sentence like that. I make videos for video creators looking to get started on YouTube. Like that kind of gives you some focus for your channel, and it also lets people know if they're in the right place or not. Like, hey, I'm here looking to how to grow on Twitter. Well, this is for video creators, it's for YouTubers. You might be in the wrong spot, Or if somebody is looking to make YouTube videos, they know, okay, here I am. Now I'm going to go ahead and dive into all these different videos. So I do think that you don't need to reinvent the wheel with your YouTube channel, but there's got to be something a little bit different about you. What is it about you that would make somebody like you? Maybe it's an experience you have, or the type of person you are, or something that's happened to you in your past. I don't know. Or just your style of doing something is a little bit different than other people. I mean, for me in my basketball training channel, here's a good example. I was kind of like the short, unathletic guy that couldn't, slam dunk over everybody, but I could shoot, and I felt like I was skilled. And so I kind of gave hope to players similar to me that weren't, 6'9", jumping out of the gym, that were kind of, short, slow, but, skilled. So that was kind of like my differentiator. I don't know. So that's kind of my advice. I do think that you want to kind of position yourself in what would be called like a blue ocean, where nobody's at, in comparison to a red ocean where there's already a ton of content out there. So, okay, let's keep going. So you got your channel up, everything's all kind of optimized, artwork and SEO, and you got your first video recorded. How do you stay consistent? How do you keep this thing going without burning out or just getting stuck and saying, hey, I got writer's block, I can't keep this going?
So for me, the way I stayed consistent was almost kind of an accident, and that was just I started the channel with three other people, and they, a couple other guys on the team, they did some research on the algorithm and were like, so we should be posting more if we want to get more views, essentially. So initially, we were coming out with a video once a month ish. It was just kind of like whenever it was got done. And then we moved to every 2 weeks. And because we had a team and we were all in this together, I didn't want to let them down. They didn't want to let me down. So for me, that kind of camaraderie is what kept me consistent with my holding up my end of the bargain, so to speak. And if you're by yourself, I think that's something I'm still working on myself. But generally, I think the basic advice of like setting a schedule, et cetera, et cetera. But even like before you figure out consistency, I think you should just make your first video and it should just take you however long it's going to take. And then from there, you can kind of say, like, okay, yeah, that took me a month, but like, did it have to? And kind of start having some real conversations with yourself of like, I think I could do that in 2 weeks, and then move down to 2 weeks, or maybe it's 3 weeks. Like, just kind of start by making a video. Don't put a timeline on yourself, but then you have a template. You're like, okay, this is a good video. I like this video. How do I make more? Then you can kind of reverse engineer it and figure out how long would this actually take me if I was actually working efficiently, and had some breathing room and wasn't killing myself to make these videos. Yeah, I think start by making a video and then be realistic with yourself about how often you can make it, set a schedule, and go from there. Like, it pretty simple.
Okay, so we're all set up now with the channel, created our first video. Now we're staying consistent. We're publishing on a weekly basis or whatever it is. What else should we be doing? Like, okay, so that's it. I've done it. I'm publishing every Wednesday. It's coming out like clockwork. What else should we be doing as creators?
Probably the most important thing is like, where's your inspiration coming from? Like, how are you going to keep having ideas for topics? And for me, like, part of that is building free time into your schedule. Like, I need a certain amount of breathing room to kind of live my life and have new experiences, read books, watch movies, whatever it is, to kind of have the recharge time, the new inspiration to even want to make videos more. Because it's like being a creator versus a producer. It's kind of like, if you're just a producer, you're kind of just like brain turned off, blah 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 blah. So I would just say, make sure you're recharging enough to want to keep doing this and to genuinely like, oh, that would be a fun idea for a video. Because the best ideas I have usually, they're in the shower, I'm going for a walk, I might be on like a short vacation, and I'm relaxed and I'm not like trying to keep the treadmill going. So I would say that recharge time is really important. Even if it's not a ton, just there should be some of it for sure.
Yeah, and I think all creators struggle with coming up with new topics, and that's kind of what the writer's block is. When we talk about writer's block and video creators, it's really the topics. Because I think once you have the topic, the script can flow out of you normally. But you kind of need to listen to your community. The questions are going to start popping up in the comments. That's a video. You should be interacting in different communities, right? What niche are you in? There's, Facebook groups, there's other communities, there's other YouTube channels in your niche. You should be commenting on there. You should be befriending people in that world, because, that's just going to help. There's the more the better, as far as that goes. And coming up with some sort of system, to come up with topics. Like, it could be comments. Every time someone asks a good question in the comments, you write it down, and that's a video topic. Or it could be, I don't know, looking at news every day and coming up with ideas. But I think for me, now that you got it down, and you're publishing a video once a week, you need to kind of get into these communities. You need to start interacting on YouTube and creating community posts and liking and commenting other places. And for me, I think that's kind of the next step. I mean, there also, of course, is like promoting your videos in different places if you want to do that. But I think building your community and interacting in other communities is important. What do you think about that?
Totally agree. Like, I think feeling connected to other creators, or even like the people who are watching your videos, it does help a lot. It kind of, not only do you end up exchanging ideas, but you end up talking with people who they're probably in a similar space to you. They're probably, there's a lot of overlap with what they're doing and what you're doing. You're going to feel less isolated. You're going to feel more connected. You're going to brainstorm together. Just it generally, I think, it's fun, and that adds a lot to your life and inspiration. And then, yeah, the community tab, making community posts. I mean, community, all the way for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned, at the beginning of this, coming up with your thumbnail style, right? Like your kind of your colors you want to use, maybe your fonts. What are, and you don't have to go too deep here, but give us like maybe a 1 minute or less breakdown of like what some best practices are for a YouTube thumbnail.
Sure. So the biggest thing is there should be contrast. So what I like to do, I mean, I kind of have it memorized at this point, but if you just Google color wheel, then you can, so, you'll see like blue, and then on the opposite side of blue is yellow, for instance. So like if you have a blue background, you should have yellow text or like a yellow image on top of the background. Like you need to create contrast. A lot of mistakes, or a mistake I see a lot of new people making, is their thumbnail doesn't pop enough. Like there's not enough contrast in it. You just end up scrolling past it. Your brain just kind of like forgets it as soon as it sees it. So contrast is probably the most important thing, even if it's just like background with text. If it is contrasty text and the text is good, then that's going to be at least decent. So yeah, contrast is good. And then other things, if you're reporting on things that are going on, like if you use a famous person's face or something, like that can help if you're talking about them, like even if you're only kind of mentioning them briefly in the video. But if you kind of start out talking about them in the video and then kind of transition to other things, like, yeah, using the likeness of established people can work really well for sure. And then, yeah, also, don't use your own face too early before people even know who you are. Like you can do that if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think you should create a thumbnail style that doesn't use your face first and then go from there.
Okay. So yeah, you're talking about, big face, some text, contrasting colors. And I would agree, these are some of the best practices to creating thumbnails. You want to invoke curiosity. And that's pretty much what you're seeing when you go and open your YouTube homepage. You're seeing these thumbnails, right? And they all have that, right? The word is out. People know you want the face with emotion. You want to invoke curiosity. You want 3 to 4 words max in your text, contrasting colors. Will that ever change? Because that's the question. 20 years from now, what do the YouTube thumbnails look like?
At some point, maybe they're going to have like an animated thumbnail option or something. I mean, that would take so much work to make an animated thumbnail every time. But I think the basics of what we just laid out are probably going to be true 20 years from now, barring some crazy paradigm shift that personally I don't really see coming. Obviously, like if you scroll over a thumbnail, then it'll kind of start playing the video in the little thumbnail. But like even then, I just think these basics are going to be true forever. And even if some big paradigm shift does happen, I think contrast is still going to be important. I think putting somebody in the thumbnail who nobody knows about is still a bad idea. I think big text that is relevant to the video, that kind of expands on what the title is saying, is still going to be a good idea. Like these fundamentals, I think, are going to apply to whatever the future ends up being.
You want to know my theory? I think you're right, though. I don't think it's the reason that the thumbnails are like that is because it's humans looking at the thumbnails, and that's what humans like. They like to see a face, right? They can identify that. They like contrasting colors. They can see it better. So I think that does stand true forever. But my theory is that thumbnails eventually are gone forever. You won't see a thumbnail. You're just going to see a screenshot from the video, or you can hover over and it'll autoplay. Because I just think people are kind of like, I don't know if the right word is taking advantage, but they are kind of tricking people with their thumbnails, creating clickbait or whatever. Why not just show a frame from the video and let them choose any frame they want to choose from the video or something like that? To me, that's just more authentic, right? You can't clickbait as easily with that. I don't know if that actually will ever happen, but does that make sense? Like,
I mean, I see where you're coming from. Like, clickbait is an issue, but you could still totally get around that. Like, you could still just have one frame in the video be the thumbnail you want to use, and then just like select that, right? It would be a weird meta, but
Or maybe
I,
YouTube has to choose your thumbnail. Maybe they choose the frame. You don't get to choose it.
hmm. I mean, isn't that how YouTube used to be in like 2005, like, or 2006 in
Before
the
custom
early days?
thumbnails, yeah.
Right. I mean, I would be shocked if YouTube reverted back to that. Truly, I would. I don't think custom thumbnails are going anywhere anytime soon, unless Google, who owns YouTube, obviously, just gets on some weird drugs. Like, I don't see it, man. I don't see it.
Oh, here's what's going to happen if Google starts diving into it more is AI generated thumbnails only. So all you can do is click generate my thumbnail, and then it's going to take the content from your video, and then it's going to automatically generate. You won't be able to enter any prompts or anything. They will choose the thumbnail so that you can't create clickbait.
Wow, interesting.
I don't know.
But like, couldn't you still clickbait with your title? Like, you can still lie.
Well,
Like,
with your title, but I'm saying it's going to take the actual content because YouTube already does do that. They use computer vision to see what images are being shown in your video. Because think about it, some videos have a title that's not related and have no tags, yet YouTube algorithm still knows exactly what's in that video, and they show it to exactly who they want to show it to because they know what's in the video because of computer vision. I don't know. We're kind of going a little left wing right here. We're kind of getting a little
Sure.
crazy, but I do think that YouTube in 20 years is going to be a lot different than YouTube today. And hopefully they don't start charging us or something to use it, but who knows?
No, I agree. It is going to look super different. And exactly what it's going to look like is anyone's guess. I think thumbnails aren't going anywhere anytime soon, but that is my opinion.
Yeah, and that's a conversation for another episode because today
Totally.
our listeners, they learned how to start a YouTube channel in 2024 and get over all the humps, use some of the best practices, and really just get going. So hopefully you liked today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. You made it all the way to the end of the video, so you might as well subscribe. You enjoyed something in this video. And if you're listening on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please follow us there. And with that said, we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Later.